Okay, today I want to talk about duality as a concept and the fact that as magicians, as magic practitioners, you are in a duality reality creation platform. And that, first of all, there are dimensions of duality, as in, like, in the West, we have a more rigid view of duality, good versus evil, the dark and the light, freedom and oppression, and stuff like that. And, I don't know, we just have a more rigid set of rules and programs that the West operates in, which I did not know that. I had to be told that because I don't naturally think that way very well, which might surprise people because people say, I've had people like project onto me that I have like a moral purity complex. No, babe, I am not shameful and I am not ashamed. And if you have shame around morality, that's probably a Western construct that you are programmed into. I'm not ashamed of myself, and I really do think of my ethics and my morality. But anyway, so let's define duality. All right, because I feel like duality and pluralism are related, actually. And it is just in this Western construct that we minimize duality and what that means. So in the West, again, it's like polarities. And in polarity, you have a sort of magnetic effect, as in these are push dynamics. They are not interlinked, they are not related. This is a Western mindset, that there's either or, there's this and this, and they have clear rules that they operate in. And I feel like that is part of why a lot of people feel the way they do in the West and are like confused about morality and that can exist. And to me, that's a product of monotheism. Largely, it's a product of because monotheism and colonization came side by side. Those Abrahamic religions were like this. With colonization, they were so close. And I want to talk about like Gnosticism, because I read for fun. I read the Gnostic texts. They're very interesting to me, and they aren't really accepted in the narrative of the Bible anymore. And in those Gnostic texts, there's a lot of pluralism. There's a lot of different gods, actually. Jesus is just one part of a greater family of gods. Like, there is, wars in heaven and earth, and like, it's so interesting. It is not what we are told Christianity is at all. And honestly, I love it. And I believe in the demiurge, and the demiurge to me is this very thing I'm talking about. It's how duality has been weaponized as like a this or this, as an either or construct, if you can follow me. Okay. So, and I will say, like, to me, like when you get into pluralism and like archetypes, right? And say topological consciousness, when you're thinking actually in higher dimensionalities, as in like what would that mean if you can apply it to the human experience, you find it's quite complicated. It is more like this and this, like it's a ton of mixtures of elements. And to me, I do think monotheism, even astrology, like which astrology was never that persecuted against. It was always used by the elite. It still is. They hire astrologers to this day. Anyway, yeah, they do. That anyway. So monotheism, astrology, as in like a more rigid archetypes as it's become, which anyway, like there's so much I could go into. These formed our relationship to time. Yes, they constructed a sense of time. You know, we have the Gregorian calendar. A lot of older societies did not view time how we do now. What if time is the ultimate duality mechanism you need to think about? Sorry if this is complicated. Yeah, with colonization, with monotheism, the Crusades, the interruption of indigenous knowledge, pagan knowledge, there comes a more rigidity. There comes a past, future, present linearity flow that a lot of societies to this day do not think in that rigidity. That is just one dual mechanism of a greater time scope that we could be looking at. Sorry. So I really hope I'm understandable here, because these are like, I don't think this is light concepts, and some people might be confused, and that's okay. So again, in Western duality, we are told polarity, one pole or the other. You don't mix, they don't melt together, they aren't compatible. And time itself is a dual construct, past, future. These are opposing polarities, so we are told, to the present. They are not compatible. They are a pole, they're pushed away from the present moment in this duality construct. If you follow me. In the Bible, we are told, there's Adam and Eve, there's Eden, there's this eternal bliss on earth. And then there's the serpent that introduces, which to my knowledge there are two fruits, right? One is beyond knowledge, one is immortality, right? Sorry, I might be misremembering. Maybe that's my own story, I don't know. But the other one is the knowledge of good and evil, duality. It's a duality bug. It's a duality mechanism, right? Let's say this is a bug, but an intentional one. So Eve eats the fruit. She realizes she's naked. Before, that wasn't a construct. It wasn't a either or. It's not like, that sense of vulnerability, that sense of am I naked or am I clothed, that's not a construct. So you could say in the eating of the apple or whatever, is it an apple? I don't know. That we are introducing the duality bug. into, which this is how the Bible tells it, all right? I'm curious to read the Ethiopian Bible, because actually one of the oldest translation of the Bible is the Bible of Gies. I hope I'm saying that right, which is can be traced to modern day Ethiopia, which there is also genocide happening there. I feel like there's a correlation between genocides on these old sacred Christian sites. That is my personal opinion. You don't have to agree with it, because there was a construct of this whole Christian narrative that honestly wasn't how it always was. The Gnostics were a huge group of people scattered throughout who were like myth building. They were world building. It was more like, I guess how we understand Greek and Roman myth. And I think it's important to see it that way, as like collective world building. But yeah, in the Christian Western story, we are told, there was Eve, she ate the fruit. It sent us into hell in a way. This duality construct, this duality bug, it made us impure, quote unquote, from God or something. Which, if you think about it, before that moment, there was only an eternal moment. Yes, before that moment, there was the eternal moment. And she had no inherent recollection of before and after. In a way, like, to know you are damned is to set a linear construct, is to set the before and after the fall, before and after damnation. If you understand what I mean. Anyway, I'm really curious to read the Ethiopian Bible, because I'm told it's so rich in symbolism, and there's a lot that's like left out in even the Gnostic and the Western Christian context that I really need to know. But I will say, I don't know as nearly enough about that as I want to know. I know some of the history, and I'm curious to learn more. And anyway, so let's say that in the eating of the fruit, we made time dualistic into the ways of third dimensionality, of space-time, of I can walk over here, I can eat the apple, right? Causation, I am damned, like God doesn't accept me anymore or something. I'm impure, which I don't think is a thing. And honestly, the West wants you to think this is a thing. It wants you to feel that way. It wants you to feel shame. It thrives on shame and confusion and linearity. But yeah, let's say that time itself is a dual mechanism. It's a polarity. And I was watching a video that like there are indigenous societies and that believe that like time moves in reverse. And I really like that. I really like that perspective, actually. And it's against everything we are told and everything we know. But one thing I will say is like, for me personally, time as a linear thing is nebulous, and I never quite understood it in the sense of linearity, and that's part of why I make mythic stories, because I don't relate to linear time. I don't relate to the human or the God, like this or that. The alienated sense of these understandings that we have come into. So, here are several ways to view time. Let me just say what I can on different ways to view time, because that is interesting, right? One way to view time, which I came up with recently or thought about recently, and I quite like this actually, that in a 3D construct, because we have space-time, I can see, there's things around me, the sun sets, all that. There's some sense of cyclical nature and causation, right? In a 3D linearity, I am forced in the role of the observer. And that's an interesting place to be in if you think about it, and for magic. Because when you are forced into the state of the observer, you are collapsing time, you are making things happen. On a quantum level, when we observe particles, that's when they come together. They're kind of in wave particle duality. Before that, they're just hanging about. They're in quantum entanglement. They're mysterious. They're just doing their thing. And then when you observe it, it collapses. It collapses into the particle. It decides, I'm going to be more coherent right now. Coherence, a signal, light. I'm going to be more coherent now. I'm going to make sense, okay? So, one way you could think of it is whether or not you like 3D linearity, that you are forced into the role of observer. And I would say this is pretty hard to argue with in general. Many of us, including myself, are going through a hell of a lot of transformations where we are receiving a lot of information of very intense levels, and that is partially why I want to do this, and I want to ease people into this. Truthfully, I've gotten downloads for several years now, and I've been quiet about it. I was waiting for a moment. I was waiting for people to say, I have that too, because I have this fear around being seen as irrational or whatever. But anyway, yeah, we are forced into the role of the observer in this current in-time duality. That is the beauty of the duality bug, of the duality mechanism, is there's always a way to view it differently. And once you start, to me, once you start viewing it differently and differently and differently on all these different levels, which to me, it's not a vertical motion, right? It's not up or down. To me, as above, so below, it's more horizontal, actually, in motion. You are like a particle scattered between realities. You're deciding what you want to be, what polarity, and you can decide. That is a thing. The way magic works really asks you to believe, and you can set those motions of belief yourself. You don't have to ascribe to particularly any occult tradition or anything you are told is a way to view duality. To me, duality is an equilibrium bug, and which means we have these extremes so we can see the light, we can see the illumination of truth in that aspect. And like for those of us on the spiritual journey, personally for me, uh, it's been very tough, and I'm not let off the hook at all. I'm like constantly being forced to view things in new ways all the time. All the time since I can remember. It's ego death after ego death here, baby. So yeah. When you are forced to observe in a linear construct, when you're bound to 3D, what can that do? Maybe you're collapsing time into every moment. Maybe manifestation is your natural state. You are in a sort of stillness. Because one thing I realize is personally, I love watching like 4-dimensional just shapes and how to visualize that. And I would really recommend it for anyone into magic and art and trying to like visualize information that way in general, which is something I like to do now. Like, I don't know, I visualize like equations into what they would look like as manifolds, and it's really exciting. I like doing all these like thought experiments of a kind. So if you are in 3D, you cannot access, because on the 4D you have another axis. I think it's called W. Sorry, I don't remember. But you have another axis. And to me, what I like to believe is time is not inherent to like spatiality. It is related to, the observer effect, mass density, gravity. Like there is a sort of relationship to time. But as you go into higher topologies, it gets more complicated. And one complicated thing is like there is a sort of like multitude of surfaces where any particular thing exists. Like it has many surfaces and in ways that are very hard to visualize in 3-dimensionality. I think time is similar. Personally, I think time is not inherent to this, and it's just we are in a dense duality spectrum of it. Like it has other polarities, and if you would map time to higher topologies, it would have different ways of expressing itself. And one thing is like when you look at 4-dimensionality, which is very interesting, like things flutter and are in constant motion. You have very many surfaces. They don't honor the rules of spatiality in the way that you would assume, and there's sort of this motion. So if you viewed a human life in this motion, it would be like you would be a slice. You would be a slice experiencing what you are right now. That's where you are, by the way, in the 3D. You are a slice. In 4D, you would be a fluttering slice. You would be a slice that is in constant movement and in constant probability paths. Like you are not beholden to one path specifically. You are in motion. Think of it in 3D. You are forced to not be in motion in that particular way. You are given these sort of either or decisions, at least as constructed by the Western paradigm. So you are forced into the role of observer. You are forced into an eternal collapsing. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, in 4D, which to me, higher topologies are real. They're just not inherently spatial, and we can't perceive them with our five senses. But the maps, like, it makes sense. When you look at the math of higher topologies, like, they keep finding information. As we know with anything with mathematics, that isn't a coincidence. Like, they are finding real phenomenon, even if you can't easily see it with your eyes. So I suggest looking into manifolds, you know, ones that come up, Klein bottle, torus, things like that, and just getting a sort of familiarity. But yeah, when you are, sorry, I'm trying to think. In the observer, in the 3D, you are collapsing time, and we have a duality bug, and I think it's here to protect us, or was. I think it's long overstayed though, and needs to evolve, and I think part of that is reconstructing relationships to time and beginning to think outside the box and explore, you know, quantum theories and philosophical thoughts on new ways to envision time. Because if you think about it, what's holding you between you and the thing you desire? It's that bridge, right? It's time. It's that construct. And likely you're living in a polarity still. You're like, I want to be rich. I'm poor. Yeah. You have not yet crossed that bridge into that other polarity sense or whatever. Which I don't, you know, I mean, I think you can manifest wealth. Probably it's easier actually in the ways of the Western occult. Like when you do the faux positivity thing, it actually works really well. I think it's because there's an egregoric type manipulation of the architecture of that. Like, it's just that so many white people did that it became a pattern structure on reality, but I don't think it's inherent. And personally for me, like, I've gotten to a point where, like, yeah, I'll use some money, I guess, if it comes, but I'm not trying to inherently manifest that. Like, I'm not as interested in it anymore because I'm beginning to see life in entirely new ways. One way you could think about it is, if you are a 4D object, say you're a 4D object with, for some reason, you are one surface of that object. You would be creating a sort of whole or path or linearity. If you were a 4D object moving through something, you were just one surface of that object, you would be experiencing a kind of linearity, right? That's one way to think about it. And you can view manifestation and even imagination, like creating worlds with your mind, creative play, as just at any point just accessing another slice of that surface that is already you. Maybe you are a very strange shape, and it might be scary to see that, and we evolved to not see that. I don't know. Here's one perspective, right? There's so many ways you could view it. That's the fun thing. You could view, manifestation as like coding in a future, specifically, like in a linear sense, like I'm here, then I get there, da 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 da. But in this sense, when I started like looking into topological math and stuff, and like hypercubes and four-dimensional surfaces, I started to see a lot differently, and I started to see this differently. Duality, life, time. And I think that's one of the most rewarding parts of it. But yeah, you could view like, I'm trying to get there, that's my destination, and there's a path. Or you could say, I see something in my mind already. That means it's coded somewhere, like some surface of self is experiencing that, or could experience in it. And either I encoded that, metabolize that if I want to experience it or not. I don't have to metabolize that. I don't have to experience it. I'm accessing simply a higher way to view it. Not higher, that's the thing. It's not inherently vertical. And I think that's, I'm gonna talk about that too. Because duality has, like, viewing it this way too has really helped me with shadow work, which to me helped me, like, learning about energy siphoning and then learning how to actually do shadow work in a way that benefited me really changed my life. Because I feel like a lot of people have a misconception, which I don't think it works this way, that in shadow work you need to accept yourself, like you're trying to gain a level of acceptance or introspection. I don't, that's not inherently what shadow work is. When you're like introspecting, you're just writing in that code more. Like you're getting into a cyclical nature of that very thing often. Like I'm very introspective person. Obviously I would not be talking about this if I wasn't. To introspect, in introspection, the body will release the same chemicals of, like, the hormones of whatever that original memory triggered. Your body is a data bank that doesn't necessarily know that that's not happening anymore. You know what I'm saying? So the path to really move forward isn't inherently introspection, and it isn't overanalyzing, which I might sound like I'm overanalyzing this right now. I do think a lot. I'm sorry. But yeah, and I'll probably talk about that in another video, that whole thing with shadow work and introspection, what it is and what it isn't. But I will say that duality, thinking of duality as not an evil thing, as not, it is a limitation, it is a limiting force, but it's not a bad one. It's not very truthful to the scope of possibility. It does limit possibility polarities in a sense. But we can view it as an equilibrium bug. And for me personally, my spiritual journey has been so difficult, and I've been challenged to rewrite myself over and over and over again, and my programming. Yeah, and a lot of people won't understand that, because I'm at a point now where it's not very hierarchical, and it's not very digestible and, like, acceptable to society, maybe, like some of the things I've overcome in my programming, and that's fine. That's my journey. Like, I don't need to justify that to you. But yeah, duality can equalize us. We can reach a sense of neutrality through duality, because I find, like, I've had a lot of challenging life situations. Very, very challenging, actually. And I would find them repeat over and over and over again. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, what am I not doing? I'm introspecting. I'm trying to be like aware. I'm trying to eat healthy, da 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 da. But my general mindset had not yet shifted. And for me personally, it's really healed me to like mentally think of the very polarity that is scary and challenging and demoralizing, like to, in any degree that it can, start to understand it, even if I don't agree with it. I don't have to agree with it to understand. And sometimes I need that explained by an outside party, because I don't actually get Western socialization, and it probably shows. I really struggle with that. But anyway, yeah. Like, I don't... Sorry, to explore the polarity, to even know where these boundaries are, that has helped me so much. That has helped me so much. And yeah, and that has helped me magically create, on top of this weird archon demiurgic architecture that we find ourselves in, to find truths that are really satisfying, to find dimensions of life that are really rich and vibrant and exactly what I need in the storytelling complex of my experience. Because personally, I look at mainstream art, I look at mainstream movies, and just in politics, I'm like, this is so boring. I'm so bored. I hate death. I hate destruction. I hate violence. I'm bored. And yes, I am so bored. It's true. But yeah, the more I challenge my own metrics and my own polarities and heal those, which you can heal those very quickly when you identify them, and like the constructs you have been forced into. For a lot of us, we've been forced into this colonial construct that does not represent us or our true nature. Like, we don't actually feel at home with it or align with it. And once you recognize, for me, what those polarities were, because they often feel like the inverse of what I feel is correct. Like, they're colonizing the world's most embodied, like, knowledgeable people, from as far as I can tell. And this always felt confusing. And the truth is, they need tight constructs and tight control and the energy siphon. They know we're embodied, and they know they don't exactly understand our knowledge because they can't. They're not imaginative enough. They don't think topologically enough. But they do sort of... they just want to control. They control in tight lines and linear constructs and dualism. And it's really harmful. It's harming our planet. It's harming all of us. And I think part of it is our relationship to time. And under capitalism, again, like, time is sort of like money. Time is transactional. It's, you can waste it, you can spend it. It's very oppressive, actually. It's very suffocating to see time that way. And it shows how we view time in literally all of our systems of reality. Like, it really shows how we view ourselves, and like the fucking depravity that colonialism and capitalism constructs the human spirit in or confines it in. Because this notion of time is not inherent. It is not destiny. It is not, destined or inevitable to happen. This was constructed. This was created. And honestly, I feel like when you go into, another thing I've noticed, when you analyze civilizations and like the rise and fall of other civilizations, ancient ones, up into the present day in capitalism, a lot of the monopoly is actually on time. It's like reconstructing that narrative around time specifically. You can see this with like back into even like ancient Egypt, because the gods are more plural back then, more cyclical. And at one point, there's Ra, there's like Seth, there's all the, like, they wanted to collapse concepts. Usually when a time of violence and colonization and strife hit, so does the colonization of time alongside it, of erasing a sort of another cyclical dimension to time, another inescapable and unfathomable dimension, because I do think time is quite elusive, quite unfathomable, and that's beautiful to me. But yeah, so I think that one of the things we can do, okay, sorry if this is a lot of different thoughts. As magic practitioners and as indigenous peoples and people trying to decolonize, I think this is a really important thing to recognize, is how time has been, it is literally stolen from us in a way, but so are our knowledge, our wisdom on time, our notion of time that doesn't fit into linear and dual constructs easily. They might be a type of dualism, but not within the topology of three-dimensionality, A lot of us, like a lot of indigenous societies, put, first of all, embroidery is record keeping. To embroider your clothes, you are record keeping, you are giving data. This is data on life, on the period you live in, on your family stories and histories and empires and tribes. You are record keeping. A lot of indigenous societies do this in varying degrees. There's record and geographical data kept in hair in a lot of societies, in embroidery, in like these ritualistic like figures too, like a sort of, I saw today that there's an African tribe that has like, it's usually in the body of a woman or in shape of a woman, and using wood and like beads and yarn and different bits of just elements that are communicating a story. That's a data bank, like, and I don't think inherently the problem is language. I do think a lot of indigenous societies understand that language can only hold so much and translate so much, and that is why, we have these other types of data, like other types of record keeping, and understanding that some things cannot be communicated in the realm of language and linearity. And I think that's a really important thing to know. I don't think like language is inherently the problem, but it is a story of the world, and it is a story of colonization by and large. And in that story, you misconstrue, you invert, you have certain constructs, you have violent everyday words that have been metabolized into the vocabulary to a degree where only indigenous peoples know the violent root of that everyday word. And that's very common in English. And I'm sure French, and I'm sure Arabic, like, you know, these are languages that have colonized peoples around the world. But yeah, I think we have to heal our relationship to time. We have to recognize that, like, linearity is a tool and it can be useful in some contexts, but it's not our tool, right? Like, we didn't make it and we didn't decide on it. And a lot of us can talk to ancestors and can talk beyond the veil and know that we are protected, know that the earth is watching us, is also a data bank with its own stories, from trees to mycelium to like water. Like, we know these things. And the colonizer, they can say they don't know. Some of them know. That's fine. Who cares? We don't care if they know or not. But yeah, and actually the body is too, but that's a whole nother topic. But I think it's just good to acknowledge that and to heal that and ask ourselves why we want the things we want, why we're manifesting the things we are. That's something I search deep in myself. I try to understand that more, because a lot of it, sadly, is survival still for me. How old am I? 28. Still, like, manifesting survival shit. Like, that's this thing about capitalism, though, and all this shit, colonization, monotheism, monarchy. It's all made this how it is. It's made struggle into the everyday moment, into survival, when the body is underfed, when the body is abused by labor. We're also not meant to labor very long as humans. Ooh, I am reading Society of the Spectacle again, where I'm like finally finishing it up. It's a really good, I like what I'm reading so far. One thing he said basically that I think about a lot is that basically, okay, before industrialization, you had people who knew they were good at certain things. You had, the artisans, the crafters, people who made pottery, bowls, medicines, farming, hunting. You knew what you were good at, and you would spend your allocated time to that thing. And there was a set amount of time to do that thing. You knew how to do that thing, how to do it well. You were an expert often. You didn't have to be an expert in one thing, but you know what I mean. Like, you had an allocated time to your area of craftsmanship, and then you just do it, and, each to their own need. Like, there was no need to overproduce. In capitalism, ooh, this haunts me. So, people started working in factories, and children started working in factories. And I just learned recently that how serfs and like Jewish children were also forced to work in factories, and how they were very well read and very political. And this is actually part of what pissed off who became the Nazis, which I find so interesting and heartbreaking. Oh my God. But anyway, so once you start working in the factories, that whole dynamic is erased. You no longer know how long you're gonna be in the factory. You just line up day after day after day after day after day. You are in the factory. Right before, you had an allocated time to dedicate to your craftsmanship. In capitalism, yes, there's a sense of false scarcity, but there's also a sense of false cyclical nature, false time. That you do not need to be in a factory 12 hours a day producing a fucking product no one fucking wants. Like, that is not your human nature to do. That is a false dynamic. Like, you no longer can predict your time and be aware of the cyclical waves and nature of time, because literally you are in this, how it, he said something like the worker, sorry, I don't have it right now, but this is a gist of it, that first of all, the planet has finite resources, as we know, and you are deemed the infinite worker, the infinite resource. You have to go day after day after day after day. Like, you no longer have any fucking relationship to yourself or free time, or like, and that is not necessary. And you are replaceable to what? Become an infinite labor resource for some other company, often. So yeah, that was really mind-blowing to me, and really makes you think about all of this. And honestly, this is part of why I think it's spiritual too. Like capitalism, or it's devoid of spirituality, but I mean that we are mined for our very essence, for our very intimate, vulnerable relationship to ourselves, to time, to cyclic nature. That is deprived of us, and it is mined, and we don't get to ask the deep questions. We don't get to know ourselves. And I think that's very dangerous for the human spirit. And you can call it what you want, but I do think there's a spiritual element to that. And I do think it's depriving us of a deeper knowing, and like what we could accomplish outside of the duality of capitalism. There could be higher dualities, but they would not even remotely resemble what we currently know that word to mean. And that's part of what I want to say is that's really heavy to see the fact they see you as an infinite resource in a finite body, in a finite world. Doesn't that speak to something greater? That's my perspective, personally. And other people are like on this page more and more, and this is why I'm finally talking about it, because it's so fucked up. And I want to bring it up. And also, my new album is, for Selfling Vale, is fusing the political and the spiritual, and like mythos, mythopoetic. That's a different album I want to make. But yeah. I don't know. I think part of the thing we could ask is, who would I be outside of this? Who would I be outside of capitalism? Because it's crumbling to the ground. We can all see that, I think. Who would I be outside of even rigid archetypes? Who would I become outside of linearity? What would I do? Who would I become? I think these are the questions to ask in the world that is being formulated right now, in the death throes of the dying world. And good riddance. I didn't need none of that. I didn't need it. Anyway, this has been the perspective, and I hope you can follow what I'm saying, and maybe I'll do several videos on duality, because I feel like that alone can unlock so much and is really important. And yeah, to summarize, I guess, in the West, duality is an either-or construct. We can apply this to time, to linearity. Under capitalism, time is constantly mined from the infinite spirit, from the finite body. Our time is constantly mined, right? It even takes a form, as in our only cycles that we become familiar with are the cycles of the machine. Where we are overworked. Humans are genuinely not meant to work this month. I think our cap is like 5 hours a day. Like, we are actually not meant to work this much. So duality was compressed into our understanding of time, our understanding of money, our understanding of economics. I would say this is related to monotheism and the flattening of mythic, polytheistic, multidimensional, like multi-archetypal stories into a more flattened existence, a more flattened monotheistic existence. You can trace the fall of empires and the transitions to like new ways of record keeping, new ways of time, new ways of seeing time. And personally, a lot of indigenous peoples all over the world understand this and know that this is a construct. And a lot of us are confused by like the construct, because we have it explained to us like it's not unnatural. We know it's not natural. Maybe some people have been metabolized into the harvest, the cyclical nature of the machine of industrialization. But a lot of indigenous people, even if we are part of it, know, not really. Like, I am not that. I am something greater. I am something beyond and within time. I can traverse something beyond and within time. I am in communion and communication with something within and beyond time. And time is just this little story that I'm in, or that I tell myself, and I can reconstruct it. I can reconstruct it atom by atom if I'm willing to do so. And I would say we are in a stage where we need to ask, am I willing to do so? Am I willing to see everything differently? What would I lose if I saw everything differently? What would happen if I took so many thought experiments to their conclusion and then dissolve those very boundaries again? That is basically what I've been doing when I'm trying to share in these videos, or I don't know, talking too much segments. So yeah, I think time is so magical, and it's so useful as a divination tool, as a way to create reality. And I just want to leave it there, because this is a very dense topic, and I know I'm not... This might be for, people have thought about this more, but I hope you can understand what I'm saying, and I will try to make more videos on duality besides just this one, because I know this might be difficult to accept for some people, and I want to ease some people into it if I can. I'm not very good at that, obviously. But yeah, thank you for listening, and recreate time and imagine new matrices that the web of time is on, and new patterns, and see where it leads you. Goodbye.